Hello, in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to hem this chiffon bridesmaid's dress. It's already marked, and then I'm going to show you my method of hemming it. Yeah, you can see the markings here, and I'll show you the layers, the setup, and some of the first steps that I'm gonna do. Okay, here's the bottom of the dress laid out on the table. This is a slit, and these are the markings here for the new hem. It has 3 layers, so there's the chiffon layer, and then there's this satin lining. There's 2 layers of it. And so the first step is going to be to hem the chiffon and then hem the 2 lining layers. And what I have to do is remove these lining layers from the chiffon, and I'm going to remove all that stitching up to that mark, the hem mark, a little past it, so that I can access all these layers and be able to hem them. A few things to note about the design of this, so that when you redo these layers, so rehem these layers, it's going to reflect the original design. And so you see this is the layer on the outside is always the longest, and then the lining, these 2 linings. So normally a lot of things aren't multiple lined like that. So you just see like something like this. There's always, the lining is always shorter, and this one's about 1.5 inches, but just my general rule to follow is just as long as the lining is 1 inch above, then you're good. Now when they added this second lining, you can see it's actually shorter than the first lining. So you want to give it about another inch shorter. Also, you can see these 2 linings right here. If you look really close, you can see the hems are opposite, like flipped. So this is like the bottom of the hem right here. This is a top view of a hem. So they're different orientations. So you have to keep that in mind and follow that. And also when you put it back together, up here you do have something to follow, so you can see what was originally done and you can copy that. But you can see right here on the inside where they're all joined together, all the layers in the seam. And then finally on the very top there is a top stitch right here. And so you'll want to go ahead and make sure all those details are followed when you put everything back together. But first, we're going to hem these 3 layers. And I'll show you how to do that. All right, now I have to draw the line for the final hem length on the chiffon. So you can see along these little marks. I'll be using, I'm going to be using a hip curve to do that, because this curved line, it's not a perfectly straight line, so you need this curve. to be able to draw it properly. And before I can do that, I just have to release these ties that attach the main layer to the lining. And so I'll take and go up as close as I can to get as much of that tie as possible, because I don't want to have to make a new one. I'd rather just use this one that's already here. And take that off. And then, yeah, it's also, the lining is attached to the other lining, so I'm gonna have to totally remove this so I can work on the linings later. But this is just for the chiffon layer. So now I'll just start connecting these, and I'm just trying to keep the chiffon nice and flat and not, because it's like the nature of this fabric, it's very very stretchy, especially along the bias. So because it's not a very stable fabric, yeah, you just have to make sure that it's not laying with any weird like stretch, or just keep it nice and flat and relaxed with how it's laying on the table. And then I'm just gonna mark along these, and this doesn't have to be exact because these little marks are not gonna line up with each other perfectly, and that's why you just have to use this to make a nice smooth line and try to catch as many of them as possible. And then just keep going all the way around the dress. So you see how this one, if you can see, this one is going higher, but I'm just going with like an average. It's like I'm averaging out these lines when I'm joining them, the little tick marks, to create one single line like that. And then the way I used to do this kind of hem on chiffon was I would go and I would actually account for the, like, this is the final line for your final hem, but I would go and create, like, take 1/8 inch below and do a whole line below that line to account for the seam or the hem allowance. But when I was studying under another tailor, they just said nobody's gonna notice that small difference. So yeah, just save the time, and especially on chiffon, because it does have this quality of stretching out and kind of warping a little bit. So yeah, they're not gonna notice that it's like barely a little bit shorter. And then just keep going around. Before sewing, I do have to change out this needle to a smaller size needle. You want a smaller size needle for chiffon because, yeah, smaller size needles go with thin, delicate fabrics. For this first step, you're gonna change your stitch length to a basting stitch, so a big stitch. Now you're going to fold exactly on that line that you drew. Just fold it under. So this is the old fabric we're taking off, and we're folding it underneath, pressing on that line. Now I'm going to sew a basting stitch right along this edge. It's going to be a very small little seam allowance, which is it's about 1/16 to probably no more than 1/8. The smaller you can get it, that means the more of a baby hem it's going to be, the smaller that little rolled hem can be. So you're going to do just this stitch along the very edge. It just takes a lot of focus. And then you're going to do this down the whole thing. So I'll show you how small that is. So you see that? How close that is? Yep, and just go down the whole edge, that whole line. We are going to take some scissors and trim this off very carefully. So get your scissor in between these two layers, and then just as close as you can, and in small little snips. If you have smaller scissors, great. I just always used big scissors, so I just take small little snips and then cut this whole thing off, trying to avoid these little loopy threads. I don't know if you noticed, but this tension is terrible. I did fix it, but that's why this stitching on the back side does not look that good. But it doesn't really matter for this one because this is just a functional stitch and we're not going to see it in the end. So now you just go along. Be careful not to nick this side of the fabric that is going to stay, but you're just cutting off. All you're doing is cutting off this fabric. And then you're just going to go down the whole way and take it off. And I'll show you a little close-up of it. So now it's just a raw edge right there. You know how I said be careful because you can accidentally nip the wrong side of the fabric? Well, this is a classic example. I accidentally did nick this side, so I'm just gonna have to make it a little shorter. Thankfully, just because of how everything was lining up, I did draw the line below this original hemline marking, so it does have the room to move for sure. So I just had to redraw my line, take out some stitching, because I'm gonna have to recrease this, and then you have to take out enough stitching so you can just recrease that and have it flow into the original line right here. So I'll probably take it about like right here and just redo that whole section. Yeah, so it happens, but it's not the end of the world, because usually it's pretty close here, so it's not gonna go up that much and make that big of a difference. And then after you cut off all that extra, now you're gonna just flip this edge one more time, and then sew very close along the edge of this, right down here. And that's going to be with a regular stitch length, so because it's going to be permanent. Okay, and this is what it's looking like on the outside. After I pressed it, here is the finished little baby hem. This is the outside, this is the underside. Now in the past, I would have taken this stitch out, so that first stitch, I would have removed all that. Now I leave it just because, so I used to remove it because I thought it was ugly. I wanted the bottom side to look, you know, to look as close to the original as possible. But in the factory, they don't use this method to make this kind of stitch. I don't know what they do. They have some kind of fancy machine or something, but they do not use this method. So it's not gonna look like this on the bottom. But yeah, I wanted it to look like that, so I would pick the stitch out. But the thing is with this, I mean, it's on the bottom, so nobody's gonna see it. Also with this chiffon, I just wanna, yeah, I just wanna prevent as little stress, extra stress as possible. Because it's a delicate fabric, I don't wanna stress it out more than I have to by yanking out threads. And then yeah, sometimes when I would take these out, you can confuse what you're taking out with the permanent stitching, and then you're ripping out the wrong stitches. So yeah, it's better to just leave it, and you know, you have a beautiful result right here, and your client is not going to care what the bottom looks like. I'm doing the same type of hem on this lining because that's what was on the original. So it's a baby hem, and I'm going to just use the same technique. Something that I did notice and I wanted to point out is sometimes if you're sewing along on chiffon or satin, silk, you can notice as the needle is hitting the fabric, these little lines just shoot out, and you can see like this one here, and those are little snags in the fabric, and that means, and you can smooth them out and they're not so obvious, but you don't want that to keep happening for sure. So just make sure that you change out your needle, because that means it's a little dull or it's slightly bent or has something, it's not perfectly sharp, and so it's catching those little fibers and pulling them. So I changed out my fabric, and now I'm sewing along, and I haven't had any more snags. That's technique, that baby hem can be used on a lot of different types of fabrics, not just chiffon, but satin, silk, cotton, anything where you want that narrow little hem. It's a great technique. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.